You are not going to get 100% of what you want in any relationship. What is your bottom line? Know it. It's not a threat. It's recognizing this is how I respect and love myself.
This is not about lowering your certain standards, but knowing everything has a limit, learning to tolerate some things. Rachelle Lamb is a recognized speaker, writer, teacher, nonviolent communication trainer, and relationship coach. And it's time for a little pop quiz interruption. I'd like you please to guess, what is the percentage of people who are watching the content on this channel who have not subscribed? Are you ready? 97.5% have not subscribed. What? This blew my mind. That means only 2.5% of you have subscribed. Please help me change that. This makes a drastic impact on my capacity to continue sharing this educational content at no cost to you. All you have to do is press that subscribe button. If you have, thank you so much. Please continue sharing it with anyone you think can benefit from this. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's conversation. This is Dr. Kasim Al-Mashat. I am so delighted to share the conversation with Rachelle Lamb, who's a recognized speaker, relationship coach, and nonviolent communication trainer. She brings an earthy and practical yet innovative wisdom to her work, curated over decades of study, drawing from cultural anthropology, psychology, history, mythology, poetry, storytelling, and deep ecology. By the way, your bio is so poetic. So I just want to name that. I really enjoyed reading your bio. So, a couple more things. Her synthesis of these disciplines provides a rich and fertile scaffolding for transformational dialogue and consistently produces powerful learning experiences for individuals and audiences that seems profound and life changing. So, friends, join us today if you've had any difficult communication with anyone in your life, or maybe you had some difficult communication in the last month or in the last week, and maybe how about today? So, this will be very practical, and I'll even be on the hot seat because we may do a role play with nonviolent communications. So, stick around till the end. But first, Rachelle, a warm welcome to you to the Pause to Elevate podcast.
Thank you, Kasim, for your warm invitation.
Thank you so much. Truly, we had a conversation before the recording, and I was mentioning earlier too, I really enjoyed it. You have such depth of experience and expertise, and I so want to pick your brain on so many things. so, but before we go into your background and story, I'm curious. One of the things you have on your website, and you have a blog about it, is why asking why questions in relationships is not helpful. So, why is that?
You start with a why.
Yeah.
First of all, I'll just say it depends.
Yes.
It's not always unhelpful, but a lot of times when people are asking why, they're
Mhm.
asking things like, why did you do that?
Right.
And when we say, why did you do that? We're not really wanting to know the details of why somebody did something.
Mm.
Really, what we're wanting in a moment like that is some empathy. You know, why did you know, why did you not pick the kids up when you said you would? Why
Right.
do you always do that? Can you hear in that the
Yeah.
explanation to that question is not going to be helpful
Mm.
because it's really an emotional plea for understanding. Do you see what's happening for me
Mm.
over here? So that's usually that's one area of the why. The other
Mm.
one has to do with the fact that for some people, it could seem like an interrogation, even if it's not a call for empathy and it's a call
Mm.
for, I want to understand you more. And it can be just the sheer enthusiasm that I demonstrate about wanting to know you could be a turnoff. Um,
Right.
or it can come across too strong. Um,
Mm.
why do you want to know more about me than I already know about me? It can sort of come across that
Mm.
way.
So there's a threat to it somehow.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
Um, and I wouldn't say it's across the board never to use a why question. And in fact, I did not, I haven't read that particular blog post. So the context is a little bit lost on me in this moment. But I do recall that it was somebody had written to me asking me if I could speak about it
Mm.
on one of my podcast episodes.
Mm.
And so I decided to write a lengthy answer to it
Yeah, yeah.
because it is something that
Mm.
people are often they don't like questions so much. Part of it
Mm.
too, I would say, has to do with the manner in which we've learned, like, what are questions about? Um, when you have a young child asking questions, they're genuinely curious.
Mm.
They want to know something.
There's a
They're
lot of why
learning.
questions there, yeah.
Yeah, they're
Why is
learning
the
the
sky blue?
world.
Why is
Yeah,
there a
they're
bird? Why?
yeah, they're excited. They're learning the world. They're trying to understand, make sense of things.
Mm.
And then when we go to school, there's a shift in questioning.
Mm.
You know, why did you again, I'll come back to that. Why did you do that? Why did you why did you not turn in your homework? Why did you speak to me that way? So now you see that these are
Ah.
there's a different tonal quality to the question.
So there's wrongdoing.
There is a wrongdoing.
Like
There
there's a
is a
tone of
like, I
wrongdoing.
know how things work and you don't.
Yeah, yeah,
Y-
yeah.
Yeah. So that's happening. And so if you're a child and you're curious and you're subjected to a lot of that, as most of us have been,
Yeah.
then there can become I don't know what to call it, but just some fear. That's too big of a word, but we're cautious then, or suspicious when
Mm.
someone asks us a question. Where are you coming from when you
Mm.
ask the question? Are you genuinely curious, or are you trying to prove something
Ah.
to me that I'm perhaps a lesser person? It could be because I don't know the answer, or when knowing the answer is important, questions can become threatening.
So well put. So
Yeah.
then the why doesn't become about understanding, but tell me why you did something wrong. Like
Yes.
explain yourself for your wrongdoing
Yeah.
and help me. But it does have a bit of like I want to understand, but I guess you made me rethink it. It has a bit of a like a bit of jab almost. Like it's
Yeah.
uh,
And you would pick that up
yeah, yeah,
energetically.
yeah.
So I don't want to make a statement saying all why questions are, problematic. But
No,
the person who wrote to me with this question, it was problematic in the relationship she
yeah.
had with her partner.
Yeah. So I guess there's something like it made me think when I looked at it, it made me think, okay. So even the intention, I may have the right intention,
Mhm.
but if I don't have the right skill or I don't know how to do it, it may come across the wrong way. So maybe my intention is I want to understand why my partner, whatever it is, love the dishes in the sink, you name it. Um, but saying the why is kind of it's coming across as attacking them like you failed our agreement, we agreed, we
Mhm.
whatever, you do this and I do that. But so what would be an alternative to help us consider in improving understanding, and then we'll go to nonviolent communication, but I'm
Yeah,
curious, like
well, I'll
yeah,
probably jump into nonviolent
yes,
communication
okay,
right
let's do
now
it.
because the tone is everything in this case. The
Mm,
word why is not the problem. It is
uh,
the tone. It is where are you coming from? And so I'll say a little bit about nonviolent communication. It's
please.
really we're talking about a consciousness here, a
Mm,
way of just seeing the world, of relating to the world. It's a way to be relational. And when we realize that so much of our instruction, how we've been educated, is based on dividing the world up into good, bad, right, wrong. appropriate,
Mm,
inappropriate, normal, abnormal. When that becomes the way we do things, then
mm,
it's always humming in the background.
mm,
And so, what is our intention when we ask anything or say anything for that matter? What are we trying
mm,
to do? Are we trying to connect? So, nonviolent communication, we're putting an emphasis on the connection first.
mm. Because otherwise, when you're describing, it's very kind of binary, either this or that. I'm
Yes.
right, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like this or that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah. And what is, for those who've never heard of nonviolent communication, made me think like, well, I'm not a violent person. Like, how is that? That doesn't apply to me. I'm very easygoing, gentle. Like, So, what is that name, and who started this nonviolent communication?
So, nonviolent communication is a process developed by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg, and he wrote the book Nonviolent Communication, A
Mm,
Language of Life, and he's written other books as well. But that is the primary go-to for nonviolent communication.
mm,
And he is no longer living.
oh,
And there is a Center for Nonviolent Communication that I am a part of. I'm a member
mhm,
of that organization, and people who are devoted and committed to making sure that his work continues in the world
mm,
because it can be so impactful. It's a very, very simple process and it's very difficult to execute.
mm,
Um, and the reason it's difficult is because we have been educated to think in certain ways. And when you think in that binary way that you spoke about,
mm.
you can feel in that uh, how it's going to be challenging in in many contexts,
Yeah.
relationship contexts, because it will emerge the moment there's a difference. And there
Mm,
are differences. People have different ways of
mhm.
doing things, different ways of seeing things, understanding things, interpreting things.
Yeah.
So it becomes useful to break down what is happening right here in this
Mm,
space between us. And what am I doing? What are you doing? What contribution are each of us making? And
mm,
where does that come from? It
mm.
typically uh, it's not original. Put it this way: it's not like I came up with it or you came up with it. We're born in a time, in a place, in a culture, and I mean, I have no way of proving this, but I have a theory that if I or if you had been born at a different time in a different part of the world, we'd be different people
Yeah. Yeah.
because of the influences. It's the influences and then what
Mm.
we do with that ourselves. That's the original part is what I
Yeah.
do with it. But it is coming in all the time and we are sponges. Children are sponges and
Yeah.
they're taking it in and we're trying to make sense of things. So
Mm,
we make sense of things in ways that in some ways are beneficial and in other ways they're not.
mm.
Yeah.
It made me, as I'm hearing you describe it, you made me think of dough. It's the first time I think of it this way. Like
Mm,
you say, that's what a wonderful kind of mental experiment. If I was born somewhere else, there's some original things that I'm adding to it, but some things that just
mhm,
context, some place. And I thought, this is a bit like dough, and I love sourdough. And
mm, mhm, mm, mhm,
there's a
mhm.
place I like to go to, and I see them,
Yes.
working it. And I'm like, oh, like the dough could be different,
Yeah.
but we get to manipulate what it's going to look like. And
Mhm, mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. So we
And
do
that
have influence.
yeah, yes, yes,
Yeah.
we do. I mean,
Yeah.
we can decide uh how we're going to respond. It's usually not a conscious choice though.
Yeah.
There's a certain point where we want to develop that capacity to consciously choose instead of
Mm.
reactively,
Yeah.
you know, just react instead of the impulse, how dare you,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever it is, or the fight, flight, and freeze response. That
Mm.
makes sense. That's our body. We all are born in a body and we're looking for threats I don't say all the time as if it's the only thing that's happening, but I
Yeah.
do believe that's always present.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's 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 important to have that. When you're crossing the street, even when it says walk, if you see a big truck coming down
You
that
better look
is
around. Yeah.
failing with the brakes,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're glad that you have that kind of responsiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to quickly thank you for stopping by and watching this content. It truly means the world to me that you're interested in creating positive change. I also want to invite you to join our amazing community. I have free events online about mindfulness, mindfulness based stress reduction, laughter, as well as retreats that you can do from the comfort of your own home. And are you ready for this? Self paced program that you can do about mindfulness and stress reduction. So you can join the newsletter below to stay up to date on all these goodies. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and press that button. It really helps me to keep this content going and reach out to more guests. Thank you so much again, and may you continue enjoying watching this episode. Yeah, so it's very protective.
Yeah.
But if it takes over, then it builds defensiveness. I can see in
Yeah.
couples or even professional relationship, it's very hard to build trust that way. If it's we keep people at bay or in distance, it's
Yeah.
challenging. Yeah.
Yeah. And everyone has a different nervous system,
Mm.
how it's developed, and there's that too.
Mm.
Yeah. Just because I react a certain way to something doesn't mean everyone else will.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you're really broadening. Like there's influences, there's cultural, there's genetics,
Mhm.
there's environmental, and you're naming like this nervous system. Some of us,
Mhm.
our nervous system is more revved up, and
Yeah.
that influences. And now then you put two people together in a relationship with all of that.
Yeah.
That makes it interesting.
It does,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially after the hormonal ecstasy or bliss wears
Mm.
off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, as it will.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then things come up.
Yeah, what?
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
a
yeah,
human, you have flaws?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's so unexpected.
yeah. So surprising.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I teach mindfulness-based stress reduction, and this whole thing of like things will show up, and
Mhm,
sometimes for some people it's a bit eye-opening. Like, wow, I want my life to be stress-free. I want it. I don't want to get upset. I want it. It's like, well, it's not if but when you're going to get upset or when stress happens or when reactivity happens, how can we bring awareness, this mindfulness piece? How can we use that right in the moment?
mhm.
Because I mean, no one is going to live like floating above water. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, everything is great. And,
Yeah.
and that's a misconception in meditation sometimes. Oh, I don't feel any problems. I kind of bypass life. But
Mhm.
that's not reality.
It isn't,
It's
and,
not reality. Yeah.
hey, it's great to have those moments.
Yeah.
It's great to have them, and it isn't realistic to expect them
Yeah.
ongoingly, and that is part of the problem I think many people face, especially in our corner of the world,
Yeah.
where, we have a very, conditioned environments, you know, and because of that, our expectations, I see, this is what I
Mm.
believe, they go up. We have very
Mm.
high expectations for not experiencing discomfort
Ah.
or disappointment. And so there's almost an indignant reaction to how did that happen? How could this possibly be? You can hear it in the tone instead of just like,
Mm.
oh, I'm kind of sad about that. I was really
Mm.
enjoying the sweetness, and now it's shifted. To be
Mm.
able to just go with that, that is how life is. And to have some ongoing reverence and gratitude for
Mm.
how things are. This too shall pass. The joy will pass. the
Yeah.
disappointment will pass.
Mm.
But there's a hardened quality about this, this expectation. Uh,
Mm.
One of my favorite quotes of Marshall Rosenberg
Mm.
is about anger.
Mm.
When I'm angry, three things are true. One, there's something that I'm wanting that I'm not getting. Two, I'm thinking it should be given to me. Three, I'm about to speak or behave in a way that virtually assures I will not get what I want. So it's
Wow.
in that second one. Two, I think it should be given to me. That's a problematic way to think.
But like an entitlement, like
Yeah, it's
yeah, yeah,
entitlement.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And so therefore, I'm going to react in a very strong way. Uh,
Mm.
Nonviolent communication doesn't see anger itself as problematic. It's what you do with that energy. What are you
Ah.
attaching it to? If it's should thinking, you should be doing this, then you know that your strategies for trying to get what you want are probably going to be counterproductive.
Mm.
And what I want to be doing is uh, connecting first with myself. Like, why am I reacting this way? It's not wrong to react that way. It's appropriate at times to have a very
Mm.
strong reaction to something.
Right,
But what
right.
are you going to do next?
Yeah.
That's the important thing.
Can you say more about that should energy? I really like how you said it. It's something about should energy, like when when we're thinking what that this person they should have done this, or they shouldn't have
Yeah.
said this, or this should have happened. Like, is that what you mean?
Yeah. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
let's just say that I'm in the hospital
Mm.
and I'm there for a couple of days. I don't know. Maybe I had my appendix removed, and mealtime is it's at 7 in the morning, breakfast, lunch is at noon, and dinner is at 5, and somebody brings it to you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it could be that I had my surgery earlier in the day and I missed a meal, and now it's 5 o'clock and I'm waiting for dinner. And let's just imagine that it doesn't arrive promptly
Mm-hmm.
at 5,
Ah,
and it's 5:30.
what?
Exactly. It's 5:30. How am I responding to that?
Mm.
Now, maybe I've asked, I've called on somebody at the desk. One of the nurses has come and said, "Yeah, it's late today. Haven't heard anything about it, but we're sure it will be here."
Mm-hmm.
What do I do with that? Because you can imagine that
Mm.
there's I have options. So I could say, I can't believe that that this is happening. How come you
Ah.
don't have more strict, whatever? This person should be punished. Somebody should be
Ah, so
punished.
somebody
I,
failed.
I'm going to write a letter to the hospital administration to
Right.
complain about this just in terrible treatment that I'm receiving. Okay. It's
Yeah.
really escalating. So I'm thinking it should be given to me. If I hear that dinner is served at 5 and I don't have it at 5, something's wrong and you're going to
Um,
hear about it. Somebody's going to hear about it because it
yeah.
shouldn't be unfolding in this way. I could be someone else though who's who's just thinking, "Wow, I'm hungry. I wish the food was here. I'm really looking forward to it arriving." And then when it arrives, we'll say 45 minutes late. 5:45, the tray is brought in by someone. And what do? I say, "Thank you so much for this. I'm really looking forward to eating it." So
Wow,
if you're wanting
what a
to have
different.
you want to have a stress-free life, you know, there is some stress in this. Your body is hungry, but you
Mm,
can choose differently. At the end of the day and at the end of your life, what do you want written on your tombstone?
mm,
Um, do you think that, screaming and yelling for it will get it there any faster? There's a good chance it will, by the way.
mm.
If it's available, if it's at the end of the hallway, usually there's some truth to the saying, the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Right.
But it's not a way to manage yourself or to be in the world.
Mm.
It's the expectation is I want everything around me to be exactly where I expect it to be.
Ah,
I will then be okay. Yeah.
yeah. Wow, what a high expectation on how everyone has to be.
Yeah.
And that's almost as a recipe for disappointment that you
Yeah.
were saying earlier. We got an issue. Well,
Yeah.
maybe globally too. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
when things don't go our way.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, things don't go our way. Now,
Yeah.
do they? Even when they do, the two sources of unhappiness,
Mm.
not getting what you want, getting what you want.
Yeah.
Because it's temporary, and also because it's not never really entirely what you thought it would be. You got the perfect job. You
Mm.
got the perfect house. You got the perfect spouse.
Mm.
No, you don't, because life has its disappointments. So how are you going to talk about it? So shall we look at that? How we're going to talk about it?
Yeah,
Let's talk about these four simple steps that are so difficult to actually
let's do it.
yeah use. So someone is doing something that you don't like, and you think it would be a good idea to address it. Sometimes that's true.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's not a good idea to address it. Other times it's a good idea to address it
Mm.
because we're imperfect creatures, and having some support from others is a useful thing. It's learning.
Mm.
It's called learning. So someone does something, says something you don't like. The first step is to make reference to that. How do you do it? You make a clear observation about what the other person is saying or doing,
Mhm.
and you say it without evaluating. So
Mm.
I would say,
Without the judgment of it.
well, without the judgment of it,
Yeah.
the judgment of it, it's not that there isn't good, bad, right, wrong. It's simply if that's the only way you think, then the way
Mm.
you speak is probably going to be very rigid. And I
Mm.
look more for that. Like, is there any movement in this, what we're talking about? Is there any
Ah.
flexibility in it? That's the more important thing.
Mm.
If we're in the court of law and a crime has been committed and someone has been harmed, it is wrong, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's right.
Okay. So I'm
That's
not
right.
here to say it's not wrong, but I don't think that that's the best language to use.
Mm.
And I'm not talking about euphemisms here. I'm talking about I'm going to use the word still kill crime. But is it towards life or is it away from life? Is it life serving? No, it's not life serving.
Mm.
I was going to say sometimes it is life serving, not to kill another person,
Right.
but it could be a rabid animal,
Mhm.
a rabid dog, for instance, where the best choice to serve life is to take a life. Okay,
Right.
now we're getting into philosophy and so forth, but let's just take a simple
So yeah.
situation, right? We're looking at whether or not this is in service to life. So I
Mm.
will say, what did the other person say or do?
Mm.
Then I will say how I feel.
Mm.
Then I will say what the underlying need is, and then I would make a request.
Mhm.
Those are the four steps. And the
Mm.
most important step, I mean, they're all important, but what makes nonviolent communication stand out, in my opinion,
Mm.
is the focus on needs.
Right.
Needs as being a life serving, as how life moves through us. And
Mm.
when we're talking about needs, there isn't a need that I have that you don't, or that you have that I don't have. So there's a universal quality that
Mm.
all human beings need: care, love, respect, honest,
Belonging. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
belonging, trust, meaning, purpose, food,
Mm.
shelter.
Yeah.
All of those things are needs,
Mm.
and they're all positive. And when people are in a conversation where there are differences, and there's tension that's arising, what they're doing is focusing on the difference.
Ah.
And what you do when you're employing nonviolent communication is you bring in something that, in fact, we both share.
Mm.
So that's the bridge.
So the needs are the bridge.
The needs are the bridge.
Hmm.
Yeah, because we both share the same needs. So, what you're doing in nonviolent communication is you're always listening for what's the underlying need that is not being expressed. Now,
Mm,
if I were to say to someone, what are you needing right now? Most people are going to jump immediately to what they want me to do differently or what they want done differently.
mm.
But that's not the need. So, we're using need in a
Right.
very specific way here. And in fact, when I'm, doing a workshop with people, I encourage them not to use the word need, but we do it
Huh.
in the workshop
Yeah.
setting just so we understand what we're talking about.
Mm.
I like to compare needs to musical notes. So if we're,
Hmm.
if you're learning it how to, sing or play the piano, any instrument, you're learning to read music, you need to know the notes.
Right.
Do, re, mi, and you're going to be practicing those in your instruction.
Hmm.
You'll keep coming back to them, doing the scales.
Hmm.
Needs are like scales, they're musical scales.
Ah.
So when you go to hear a musical performance, you don't want to hear do, re, mi, the scales. You're like, hello, I want to hear something creative. What's the beauty in this?
Mm.
And the beauty in it is that you take it in, you know what the
Mm.
needs are, and you make sure that it shows up, not in a formula way, but in a easeful, creative, beautiful way that
Mm.
you're going to speak about it, you know?
Mm.
Let's just take, for example, a child says, I don't want to go to school. And what do most parents do? Oh, you have to go to school.
Right.
Or, oh, are you having problems? Is someone bullying you? Do you not like the teacher? Now we move into problem solving.
Mm.
So we're talking about a child who says, I don't want to go to school.
Mm.
And typically we'll say something like, well, you have to go to school. That's the law. Or we'll go into problem solving. Are you being bullied at school?
Or
Is it
what?
you
Yeah.
don't have any friends? You need to learn how to stop being so shy and come out more, assert yourself a little bit more. Or you don't like the teacher? What's happening?
Yeah, just kind of like deal with it. I mean,
Yeah,
same thing would come up. I was as you're saying that's like going to work. Someone's like, I don't want to go to work, or I don't
yeah,
want to whatever go to
yeah,
the gym to deal with this person, or I don't want to go to the gym, or whatever.
yeah. So I want to know, like, what's behind what this
Mm.
person is saying.
Mm.
Now, I'm going to say that the child is in grade 6. Okay, so I think that's 11 years old,
Mhm.
around there. And they're not, they have a way of moving, I don't want to go to school. Now, if you were to address the need, and you're going to try a few times because we don't always get it right the first time.
Mm.
Sometimes we do, but the point isn't to get it right. The point is to eventually connect
Mm.
with the person. So, I'm just going to fast forward to what I'm imagining. I've heard you talk about this a few times.
Mm.
You don't seem to be that excited about going to school, and
Mm.
I'm wondering what's going on for you. I don't know. I just don't want to go, and I just hate it. I don't
Mm.
want to do it. I hate everything about it. Hmm. Wow, that sounds challenging.
Mm.
Yeah. Um. Is it is it because you don't find any meaning in it? Is it hard to
Mm.
figure out how it's going to be useful to you? Yeah, like it's stupid. Like, I'm never going to be doing this. Like, this kind of math that I'm learning, I'm not interested in it at all. Okay, so now you can see now, here's a
Right.
point of like, what are you going to do with this?
Yeah.
Are you going to try to convince your child that there's reason that they should be learning it? I'm not opposed to doing that. It's just not the time.
Mm.
It's not the time to do that. Yeah, so you have a really hard time seeing how what you're learning is going to be relevant to you later on. You're
Mm.
not seeing that in the big picture.
Mm.
No, I get it. I hear you.
Ah.
That's That's rough. So connect.
So just deep understanding. Like there was a lot
Yeah.
of empathy, understanding, and
Mhm.
really wanting to understand like what's happening there. Like what's
Yeah.
happening, not because something is wrong.
Yeah.
It's like, or being a bad kid as an example of, or any example that someone is thinking about for themselves. It's you wanting to understand like what's going on there.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the word you said, connect, like not wanting to understand to condemn. Like now I know why you're da, 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 and point finger again,
Yeah.
and we all do that. Like we've all done this with friends and partners, and pointing,
Mhm.
but to use the word connect, so using that understanding to connect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one less stressor for the child in
Mm,
that moment, that the parent is not being combative with them,
mm,
not trying to convince them of something, and just being with what is. Yeah. So
mm.
you have a hard time seeing how this is actually going to play out in the end, that
Right.
it's relevant in any way. Hey, all of us spent time in school. Now, there are a few of us who claim to have loved school.
Mm,
I don't know that they loved every moment of it, um, but there a lot of us remember, and that's one thing I think would be important. Parents uh,
mm.
can remember.
The difficulty. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I know it's hard. Don't
Mm.
act as if you don't know what the kid is talking about. You
Yeah.
know. So, but now we're trying to overcome, all of these kinds of challenges, and so
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
get the
Yeah.
kid to, like, brace themselves and get ready, because you got to go to school so you can become a whatever it is,
Yeah. Yeah.
the grand plans that were not made by the child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also timing, like you're saying. This takes patience and willingness to actually pause
Yeah.
and to like, okay, let's explore, let's connect. I think most of us are living so like rushed.
Yeah.
Hurry, gotta go. We don't have time to talk about this. Let's go.
Yeah. N-
And then needs get pushed down, and I'm guessing it's the same. And I'm sure you have an example of like a relationship. I wonder if we
Well,
if we
before we jump to
yeah.
that, I'm going to finish this one off,
Oh,
because
there's more. Okay,
I'm
great.
thinking about listeners who might be going, okay, but what are you going to do now? Your kid
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
want to go
yeah,
to school, and you're agreeing with them. What next? Like, hello,
yeah,
I got to get out the door. The kid's got to get out the door. This
yeah.
is
Is
not
the kid
helping me.
stay? Are we
Yeah.
quitting school?
Exactly. And I know we've got homeschoolers, but I don't want to be one of those. So, or I can't afford to be one of those.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. So the needs that I stated,
Mm,
that perhaps, I didn't say, I could say you have a need for meaning and for relevance.
mm,
Is there anybody who doesn't have that need? If you're going to devote 6 to 8 hours a day in an institution somewhere, do you want it to have meaning and relevance?
mm.
Yes, I would say you do. All of us instinctively, although a child may not use that language,
Right.
but you can, as the parent,
Mm.
speaking to them, because how do people learn, bigger words? Is by hearing them. So, but you can just say, hey, it sounds like you really want meaning and relevance. You're not sure how this is going
Mm,
to pan out in the end, and it's certainly not what you feel like doing now, is it?
mm,
Is it? No. And when you say, I get it,
mm,
you know I know what that's like. I've been where you are. I'm also looking at the clock.
mm.
I'm seeing that normally we're in the car by now. Here's what I want to do. Can we pause this conversation and come back to it?
Mm,
Okay, so now you're out the door, but you're coming back to it. You know, you can come back to it, and you can also agree. I got to say, I don't know if it's going to be relevant or meaningful to you in the end. I actually don't.
mm.
The world is changing so fast, it's hard to know sometimes.
Yeah.
But here's the one thing I do know, is that that's what we've got right now. And that enduring some of the hardship, or when it's boring, if we can get you through that, You
Mm,
will end up with some knowledge that will be useful to you. Some of it won't be. But you will have more choices about what you want to do with your
yeah.
life. And I really want that for you. How do you feel hearing that? Oh God. You know, who knows? I don't know what kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
kid
yeah.
but I'm just trying to imagine that the kid doesn't really care. That would be at the worst, right? And
Mm,
say, and you know, I'm hearing you don't care about that right now. Uh, and I want you to have some trust in me that
mm,
I do know the lay of the land and I get it. I know
mm.
how hard it is, but you want to have be a friend to this person. I know
Yeah,
parents and kids we're not friends, but there's a warmth to it,
yeah.
and there's an understanding. We
Mm,
do as parents know, or we ought to know.
mm,
You would think because we've been through it.
mm,
We've been through hardship, and so be be the friend to the hardship, and then convey that to the child
mm.
so that they can carry on. They know that you have their back
Yeah.
by doing that. So that's how I would, try to resolve that so that you still have the child going to school, but with a different kind of energy. They know that they have a supportive parent
Mm.
and someone they can talk to. That's important.
Yeah. You know, this example that you're sharing is so practical. It made me think actually of in solution focused brief therapy approach in counseling.
Mm,
One of the approaches that I use as well. And there's a saying, lead from one step behind.
sweet. Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's like leading from one step behind. So you're not pulling, you're not
Hmm.
pushing, and that's a feeling I got when you're describing this. And even someone that doesn't have kids and listening to this, like, oh, it's relating to how do you meet someone and that doesn't want to. You're not in alignment of what they're
Hmm.
doing, and there's something like you're curious, you're supporting, but there's also respecting of autonomy, like
Yes.
this person can still make a choice not to go
Yeah.
to school. Like there's a respect of autonomy, and let's work
Mm.
together. There's a
Yeah.
yeah,
I want you to choose to go to school,
yeah,
even though you're not seeing much benefit in doing it right now.
right, right,
Not because you have to, not because I'm making you do it,
yeah,
but I want you to see that we're playing the long hand here.
yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Someone listening to this, I'm smiling because this is how I'm thinking as well. Is okay. Can I apply this to make my partner choose to do things that they're not doing?
Mm.
like I would like you to choose to do this and not this, and I'm gonna lead from one step behind and get them. Like I think I want to do nonviolent communication and change everyone around me.
But you'll have to start with yourself.
Right.
This is the thing.
This
Now,
is the
okay,
caveat.
let
Right,
me
right.
let me share a poem.
Yeah.
Marshall Rosenberg used to, when he traveled around the world, he had a guitar and he would, every once in a while, someone would ask a question. He'd say, I'm going to sing a song for
Oh
you. And
yeah.
he'd reach down and he'd get his guitar. And I'm just going to recite this one, but it's called Song from Brett.
Mm,
Brett is Marshall's son, who at
mm,
the time was 16 years old.
mm,
So here, and he sang this. If I clearly understand you intend no demand, I'll usually respond when you call. But when you come across as a high and mighty boss, you'll feel like you ran into a wall. And when you remind me so piously about all the things you've done for me, then you better get ready. Here comes another bout. Then you can shout, you can spit, moan, groan, and throw a fit. I still won't take the garbage out. Now, even if you should change your style, it's going to take me a little while before I can forgive and forget. Because it
mm.
seems to me that you didn't see me as human too until all your standards were met. Beautiful.
Wow.
So I
Wow.
love that particular piece because it so beautifully illustrates the tragic dynamic that can come
Mm,
up between people.
mm.
And all of us have been on the receiving end of that
Yeah.
and probably the giving end of that too.
Mm.
and it's about all your standards being met. There you go. I have these very high expectations. And, when the other person just becomes a needs satisfying machine, that's not
Ah.
what we want. So, we're talking about consciousness here. And
Mm,
and part of that consciousness, at least in my opinion, is being willing to accept the limits of
mm,
life because we're flawed,
mm,
because we die,
mm,
because we don't always get what we want. And can you, under those conditions, still live a beautiful life?
mm.
Can you bring beauty to it instead of frustration that you
Oh,
didn't get your way?
mm,
Um, this isn't so much well it isn't a feature the way I just said that. It's my way, my kind of
right.
unique way of framing it in a poetic way. I do like the aspect of poetry because, as the poet David White says, poetry is the language against which we have no defenses. So, yeah, bring some beauty into it.
Mm,
And there's a lot of beauty in longing, um,
mm,
a longing for things, even though you know you may not get them. In fact,
mm,
there's a good chance. What is unrequited love?
mm,
I'm telling myself I love that person over there. That's we believe that we have all of this whatever's getting activated inside of us. The heart
mm,
racing, and I feel a certain way around that person, so I
mhm.
want that person in my life. I love that person. It usually doesn't turn out that way even when you get that person. But in unrequited life love, you never get the person. Can you still have that kind of courtship
Mm.
way? I mean, that's where unrequited love and the kind of poetry that was written in the time
Right.
by people. Well, typically it was a man who'd be writing a poem for a woman who
Mm,
was already uh, married to someone, and
mm,
he knew he would never have her, never, but he still says beautiful things about
mm,
his longing heart. So
mm,
that could be a way that nonviolent communication. I have seen that when people are really deeply immersed in it and have an understanding that they don't always get what they want, then what they're doing is they're mourning. Celebration and mourning
mm.
are needs. And we love celebration, but we don't have much tolerance for mourning.
Ah.
So learning how to mourn, say, yeah, I was really disappointed when you didn't call. I was
Mm.
really looking forward to uh, us. Let's imagine someone was coming to visit.
Yeah.
They're in town, but they're only there for a few days, and they live thousands of miles away, and this is your opportunity to see them, and
Mhm.
you don't get to see them. And maybe
Mm.
some plans had been made, penciled in, not 100%
Mhm.
certain.
But
And
didn't go through.
even if they were 100% certain, it doesn't happen for some reason. Now you start questioning the friendship and thinking that, this doesn't meet your need for mutual regard.
Mm.
Okay, but I'm using a particular tone as I say it.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
Instead of mourning, just saying, "Wow, I really I'm sad I'm not going to see you."
Yeah.
And let's make a point to at least connect over Zoom or whatever we're going to do. It's just, yeah, my heart's breaking. And
Mm.
that's the heart broken is the way the love is now
Yeah.
showing up. It's good to be able to do that.
Mm. So this is the tolerance for disappointment you're mentioning. So we have
Yeah,
yearnings and like wishes. We're wanting something to go a certain way,
yeah.
and it doesn't go that way, and tolerating. I guess is this what you mean by limits?
Yes, well, and the limit is just that is life. You just don't get
Mm,
what you want.
right.
Eckhart Tolle, where you know who he is. The So I remember one of the things he would say is, if you ask someone, "How do you feel about reality?" "Oh, I'm totally against it." So it's recognizing there are times when you can make changes.
Mm.
Let's imagine one, okay? Do
Mhm.
you want to talk about the dishes in the sink?
Yeah,
I'm tired of you leaving them there.
yeah.
Um,
Let's do that. Let's do dishes in the sink. Great. For anyone who's ever left dishes in the sink, this is for you.
yes, yes, yeah. It's because you don't want to keep cleaning up after the person.
Mhm,
Fair enough.
mhm,
Okay, this is now I am going to try to make some changes about my current reality.
mhm.
And I think I can. I'm counting on being able to do this. And to say, you know what? Humor is a great thing too.
Yeah.
I like to use humor. Um, but it won't always be available to us because
No.
you can be really upset about something.
Yeah.
And it could be just choose your timing.
Yeah.
If you're going to blow your lid, do it as much as you can. Try to use the need language, saying, "I'm feeling so frustrated,
Mm.
when I see the dishes in the sink that you've used." Okay, I'm not saying, "When I see you being so sloppy and inconsiderate."
Ah, okay.
This is an evaluation,
This
and
is the
I am
judgment again.
yes,
Yeah.
so I'm saying when I see the dishes in the sink. Now, it doesn't mean I don't have some judgment. I am inside, I'm going, "I think
Going
it's
and it's
wrong,
yeah.
man. I think it's
It's
wrong." But 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 I'm still gonna say something about it.
Mm,
And so when I see the dishes in the sink for, for I don't know, for the 3rd time this week, I gotta say I'm feeling some growing frustration.
mm,
And I have a need for consideration and just some
mm,
awareness that we're sharing a space here.
mm.
So I'm wondering, now there's two, you got a couple of options here. If this is the
Yes.
first time, you could, eh, we want to connect. I want to know what's coming up for you hearing what I've just said. Could
Mm,
be one thing that would be recommended if you have the time, is
mhm.
to say that, is to say, "Hey, I want to make sure you're not hearing blame and criticism, even though there's a little bit there. I want to
Mm.
know, what are you hearing me say right now?" You could
Ah,
say
so
that.
checking
Or
in with someone.
I could say, "What are you hearing me say?" I could
Yeah.
say, "Can you tell me what comes up for you?" You have options.
Mm,
Or you could say, "I'm wondering if you'd be willing to clean up after yourself before you leave the house in the morning."
mm. So before we go to Valent, if we just backtrack for a moment as a refresher for listeners, the
Yeah.
4 steps, and you just did step 1 and can you name them again, the 4 steps just for listeners?
Yes. The first step is to make a
Mhm.
clear observation.
So step 1,
The second one is to say how you feel.
2,
The third one is what your needs are.
3.
And the fourth one is to make a clear, doable request. And that request can either be for connection or to move to a solution. But in
Mm,
NVC, we do recommend connection first
mm.
before going to a
Yes,
solution.
okay.
If you have the time, it could be in the moment. You're just so upset. Like, I don't want people to think that, "Oh boy, I have to, now I have to become a completely different person." No,
Mm,
no, you don't. Just choose your battles and
mm.
become more aware of who you are. In
Yeah.
fact, get to know yourself and get very clean and clear with what your needs are, what your feelings are. Feelings, that's a very big piece, too, when I'm teaching, because there are a lot of words that people believe are feelings and
Mm,
they're not. Let me give you an example. I feel put down. I feel disrespected. I feel ignored. I feel unappreciated, unloved. Okay. You get it?
right.
These are not feelings. Now, you're nodding. So I know you've taken a workshop before. So you do know what I'm talking about, but not everybody's going to be,
Right.
"What?
What do you
What do
mean?
you
These are
mean?
feelings. I do feel
What do you mean
disrespected or
unappreciated? It's not a feeling."
yeah.
No, it's an interpretation of another person's actions.
Mm,
You are telling yourself that someone is not appreciating you, and therefore you feel unappreciated, but
mm.
that's not the feeling. The feeling is probably frustration,
Yeah.
hurt, dismay. It could be any amount of feelings.
Mhm.
You could be crying when you say you feel unappreciated, and there you're actually feeling hurt, or you
Yeah.
could be screaming and full of rage. And then, well, I guess the person's very angry.
Right. Now it's showing
So
up.
so those words don't express feeling. It
Mm,
doesn't mean that when someone says it, feeling isn't present. But if you were to receive it in writing, you have no idea. If someone
right.
says, I feel disrespected, and you get an email, you have no idea how they feel. You know
Mm.
it's not good,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you don't actually know what the feeling is. So we're
yeah.
trying to have people take responsibility for their feelings and
Mm,
also connect their feelings not to what other people do, not their actions, but to their
mm,
needs. So I feel as I feel because of my needs that are
mm.
activated in a moment. I
Right.
Yeah, so I feel joyful feelings when the needs are being fulfilled, and
Mm.
I feel, unhappy feelings when the needs are not
A
being
numbment,
fulfilled.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, a question for you, as we go to this example of the dishes,
Mhm.
and thank you for, going over 4 steps again. And
Mhm.
as you said earlier, it's actually easy, but it
Yeah.
isn't. Like, it's so simple, but it's not easy. It takes practice. And so is there in this process a point where before, let's say, approach your roommate or a partner, whoever left the dishes, and like sitting with oneself going, okay, why does this matter to me? Is it worth it? Maybe I got to change my perspective. Dishes in this thing is not a big deal. Like, is there a piece about that where, becoming aware, like, why am I so bothered by this?
That is up to each individual.
Mm,
I highly recommend it. I mean,
right.
you want to know what are the needs that are alive in you at any given moment.
Mm,
So, why is this important to you? You might talk yourself out of it, just saying it's not a big deal.
right. And
Um,
then you ignore your needs, and that's what I'm wondering.
yeah, it's a tricky thing. A
Yeah.
lot of people who come to nonviolent communication, I think, are not everyone, but many of them are conflict avoidant.
Yeah.
Um, I would raise my hand and I would
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
yeah, that was what brought
Most
me
people. Yeah.
to nonviolent communication.
Yeah.
It's like I'd rather just retreat and go, oh, it isn't a big deal. But maybe that's not the best way to look at it. It's true in the it's true it's not the biggest deal. Okay?
Yeah.
But what if you're a parent and your 27-year-old son has moved back into your home, okay,
Mm,
which is a common occurrence now, okay?
mm,
So things have happened in his life, and he's appreciating a little bit of, he gets some financial support from moving
mm,
back home with mom and dad. And that's what he's doing. Is it, are you going to say it's not a big deal?
mm.
Okay, you happen to know that his last relationship didn't work out so well. This might be one of the reasons.
Ah,
I mean, here's another thing. We're adults, right?
mm.
That's a question. Not sure. Age doesn't make us adults, but accountability and taking responsibility for our actions does.
Mm,
Um, it's so easy to move back into the family home and go back to childhood behaviors.
right.
It's very easy. Um, so I think if the person is going to be there for several months, I think it would be an important conversation to have.
Mm,
Is, hey, I'm your mom. Uh, I know I've spent a lot of years picking up after you, and it's not something that I want to keep doing. I enjoyed
mm,
it then, and I notice I'm not enjoying it now. And I
mm,
want us to enjoy our time together here. And it's so great to have you here. I'm
mm,
wondering if you'd be willing to clean up after yourself in the kitchen. How's that for you to hear that?
mm.
Now it depends on who I'm talking to. I'm
Right.
imagining you're my son right now as I'm doing this,
Right.
and you're a pretty agreeable guy, so, um, and it's hard to know. I mean, I had this conversation recently in a training that I did to for a group.
Mhm.
Someone asked this very question. My son has moved back in the home and he doesn't care. He just goes,
Mm.
whatever. Like he just doesn't care.
Yeah.
So you're going to be speaking to the person and trying to connect with what's alive in them. It's
Right.
not the same thing that would be alive in your brother or
Yeah.
your neighbor. It changes. So really there's an element of just feeling what is happening between us right now.
Mm.
And this is what's I feel anxious bringing this up because I treasure having you here. I'm worried you're going to get up and walk out of the room or
Mm.
like be honest, but also be assertive
Yeah.
and believe that what you're doing is in service to life.
Yeah.
It isn't. I believe it's in service to life for all of us to live here together, knowing that we're adults and that we take care of the
Mm.
messes that we make.
Mhm.
If you're in a rush and you ask me to clean up after you, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
That's different though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in a way, you're negotiating, you're working together, you're making a request.
Yes.
And, this also makes me wonder if someone is not willing to come to the table, then what, right? Like this is the challenge of, this is not just in the dishes, it could be a challenging neighbor or coworker, a
Hmm.
relationship or relative. Does anyone have any challenging relatives?
Oh yes. Oh yeah.
So, I mean, like, who doesn't? And then if they don't want to, not willing to come to the table, how do you work with your participants or clients when they show up with that?
There's 8 billion people on the planet. This is where
Mm.
limits I think is really important or
Ah.
boundaries or I don't particularly like that language, but it's just recognizing, look, you know what your bottom line is. I
Mm.
encourage people to know what is your bottom line. And you are not going to get 100% of what you want in any relationship. It's
Mm.
unlikely,
Mm.
hugely unlikely. So let's say you get 70%
Mm.
of what you want. Like do an inventory, not, not like not a critique of the other
Right.
person, but it's like, hey, I enjoy these things. And for those things that I enjoy, I'm willing to not make a fuss about the other 20, 30 that I don't,
Mm.
depending on what it is. Okay. If the person is a philanderer or
Right.
has really, spending money behind your back and then you find out you're in bankruptcy. I mean, those are different.
But that's right. Different
Well,
conversation.
they're
Yeah.
even then you can stay with someone, but
Mm.
what is your bottom line? Know it and don't use it as a threat. It's not a threat. It's
Mm.
recognizing this is how I respect and love myself.
Mm.
And it allows me to bring myself fully to our relationship.
Right.
And when I'm failing to do that, I don't want to do that anymore.
Mm.
So people think of it as, oh, I know you're just going to present an ultimatum, and well, okay, you can call it that if you want. I'm telling you, this is that important to me,
Right.
and there are 8 billion people on the planet, and we can be with different people. We deserve to be happy
Ah.
or to be content or to live well,
Yeah. Yeah.
to be feeling good about the choices we're making. And right now, I'm not feeling so good about this choice.
Right.
Do you wanna go to counseling together? Do you want to change?
Mm.
Do you sometimes it's yeah, you're we don't love unconditionally in
Mm.
in adult relationships.
Mm.
That we try to be
Right.
compassionate, but there are certain things that you're probably not going to put up with.
Mm.
Don't hold it over the other person. You can
Mm.
bring it to the table, say, "This is what I would like." And if it's something that you're willing to do, that'd be great. And if the person says yes, and they don't do it perfectly, but you can appreciate the effort that they're making, that's a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's you have a like a relationship reckoning. It just I experience enough
Mm.
joy in this relationship to not make a big deal about those little things, like whether the person, puts the toothpaste cap on, or,
Right.
leaves an empty coffee cup in the sink from time to time, or
Yeah.
they're not big deals in the end.
Yeah.
You tried, but it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is. And you recognize this is how people are. Sometimes it's okay to say, well, this is who I am.
Mm.
Like I'm forgetful at times. Okay, so we can work on memory, but you'll probably
Right.
still always be forgetful. But
Yeah.
to say, this is how I am, I cheat on whoever I'm with, then I'd be like, okay, well, you're going to find someone else
It's
to
not
cheat
gonna
with.
work.
It's not going to
That
be me. It's not
right.
going to be me.
So this is not about lowering your you have certain standards. It's like here's what's acceptable, here's what isn't. It's not
Yeah,
like oh no standards. It's not lowering the standards, but knowing everything has a limit, and some things we just learning to tolerate some things. And I think
yeah,
all of us maybe grew up watching some movie of it's always a happy ending is just perfect after they meet and work through a challenge and happily ever after.
yeah.
But relationships are like it can be bumpy, things can come, things can go, and how do you work with it? And our time has gone by so fast, and I literally have probably an hour more worth of questions for you. And I'm wondering in just the last couple of minutes before we end, the two things I'm still curious about from your experience. What have you noticed that are signs that a relationship is there's a breakdown happening in an intimate relationship? Like, is there things that for you, oh, these are some red flags? I'm wondering because I just there's one of them popped up for me as you're speaking here. It's kind of content, dealing with
Mm.
like and resentment. But I'm wondering, do you see things?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, those are, I mean, every relationship has its own way of being in the world. And,
Mm,
it's not for me to say, but I would say like contempt and
mm,
resentment. When that starts to happen, it erodes the goodwill
mm,
that is an absolute necessity in a relationship. That's the thing to watch for. And that's not necessarily about a person's partner. It
right.
can be, but sometimes our expectations are not reasonable.
Mm,
And if we start to have resentment because I'm not getting what I want, and you're not asking for what you want, that's another thing too. Many
mm,
people don't know how to ask for what they would
right.
like.
Right.
They kind of think, well, you should know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're a mind reader. You were the first few months when we were together. No, no, people were not mind reading. You were in this
Mm,
place of symbiosis and limerence where you were so connected. But we're talking about two individual people. And when you have the resentment that starts to come in, it
mm,
eats away at the goodwill.
yeah.
And then you're not happy to see the person. You're not happy to be with the person.
Mm,
That's a sign right there. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be with them. It might mean you need to look at what you're doing.
mm,
Maybe you're not asking. Maybe you're not showing appreciation. When just the mere act of showing appreciation
mm.
uh, changes us too. when
Yeah.
I when I say, "Hey, I really appreciate you, doing this for me," and how regularly you do it for
Mhm.
me. It's like it really meets my need to know that I matter to
Mm,
someone, and it makes my days much easier.
mm. So that's a
So
great counter, this appreciation,
yeah.
countering this content and
Hmm.
resentment, and yeah. Anything else in terms of signs that you're like, oh, here's something that couples come in with or
Um,
struggle with? So contentment,
I
not
look
sharing their
for I
needs.
look for I use this word at the very beginning, rigidity.
Ah,
You can see there's an energy about it,
mm,
you know. Well, I don't see it that way. It's never no, no, you're wrong. It's never been like that. It's not like that. Okay. There's a
ah,
certainty, rigidity, that kind of energy. I mean, hey, it's great to be certain about certain things at certain times,
right, right.
but relationally, it can be very challenging.
Mm,
Um, to have that.
Yeah.
So the energy of it, is there a warmth there? Is there an openness?
Mm,
Some kind of flexibility? Yeah.
mm. So beautifully said, truly, and
Mm,
so enjoyed this conversation. And I want to ask you one final thing, which is, the name of this podcast is Pause to Elevate,
mm.
and I'm wondering, what does it mean to you? Pause to elevate. What comes to mind?
Um, well, you put me on the spot there, but now we're talking PAUSE, right? Not PAWS.
That's right. Not the doggies.
I like to be creative. Um, but I mean, elevate, okay, so I understand that to be lifting. So just that,
Mm,
you know, taking a moment
mm,
to raise each other, or
mm,
to raise life and to put life where it properly belongs, as something bigger than us, more mysterious than us,
mm,
and to do what we can to make this a more beautiful and loving place,
mm.
even though we're going to fail. Like,
Right.
holding a standard doesn't mean you have to meet it all the time. Don't beat yourself up, you know. But yes, that's what it means.
Mm,
Yeah.
truly beautifully said.
Mm.
And so enjoyed this conversation. I actually look forward to listening to it myself.
Me
Now that
too.
we've had it, I'll go back and listen. And I wonder, how can people reach you, whether they're interested in you doing public speaking or your workshops or one-on-one work. And I'll put in the show notes. Is there a website or social media that you'd like
Yes.
me can maybe?
I have a website
Mhm.
like most other people, RachelleLamb.com. And unlike most other people, I don't tend to it very well.
It's a
I'm not
beautiful
one of
website, though. I
those.
have to say, it really is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. I mean, all of the SEO traffic and all of that stuff. I'm not so good at marketing,
yeah,
but people do know how to find me.
yeah.
And I have a lot of resources on
Mhm.
my website.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's there. And I do work with individuals, with couples, and I also
Mm,
go into organizations or work with groups when
mm,
they'd like to bring NVC awareness into their
mm,
environment. Yeah.
mm. I'll put all of that in the show notes. And anything else that you wanted me to ask you? Didn't ask you anything else you want to share before we end?
Um, Honestly, I can't think of anything. I'll just say, hey, it's been a real pleasure to spend time with you.
Mm,
I really appreciated the playfulness, but also the sobriety of the conversation.
yeah.
And I'm hoping that your listeners will find something that they one little thing that can you know have them pause,
Yes,
elevate. Yeah.
exactly. Well said. Well
Yes.
said. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us today. And I also want to thank all the listeners for listening. And if you're watching on YouTube, for watching. If you found this useful, please share it with friends, family, coworkers, neighbors, whoever you think can benefit from this. And if you haven't subscribed or followed, please do so. It really helps me. Thank you so much. May your moments be filled with ease and may you be present in as many of them. Thank you. Hello there, and thank you so much for stopping by this channel. I hope you find this content useful, and if you do, feel free to hit that subscribe button. It will really help me to reach to more people and keep this content going. Here we are journeying together, and let's see where this takes us.